here is my new desk. And yeah, it's a lot smaller than my old one. My kids think it's too small. They don't like it. My wife is unsure about it. And Roloff, who you know from this channel, his response was, is this a desk for ants? So what's the deal with this new setup? Well, I'm glad you asked. So if you haven't been following this channel for very long, you might not know that this space here, this is new. This was all designed and built from scratch within the last year. And right from the beginning, when we put my old studio desk in here, I felt like this desk is too big. For one thing, I had to push it quite far out from the back wall just to have enough space width-wise so that I could still walk by the desk. And this isn't a very big room to begin with, so I just felt like it was eating up way too much space, making the room feel kind of small. And around that time, I was sent this pair of Atom monitors to try out, which is very kind of them. Thank you very much. But it was so hard to try and figure out how to fit those monitors in behind that old desk. I've tried a few different setups. It was just super crowded. It just wasn't working. And so I thought maybe if I had a smaller desk, it would allow more space to have different monitor stands, and I'd be able to actually have different pairs of monitors there. But there's more problems, and you would know this if you've seen the studio build videos, but over here beside the desk, behind these panels, if we take those off, there's a section of wall that actually is layered and connected by magnets, and you can pull that off, and the electrical panel for my house is behind those acoustic panels and that section of wall. So what was happening was a few times we were having problems with the breaker for our oven, and I would have to keep coming down here and literally moving the entire desk aside, moving the monitors that were on the stands to take all this down and access the electrical panel, which, granted, it doesn't happen very often, and we fixed that problem. I haven't had to access that in a few months now, but when it happens, when it occurs, it's very annoying and it's just a hassle. There was just no space there. And lastly, just the desk itself. It was putting it in a smaller room that really made me realize how big it was and how much wasted space there was. I mean, it had 6 rack unit spaces on either side, and I really only needed one. I was using a couple. I was using patch bay in there, which really didn't need to be there, my interface, which I do need, and then I had a power conditioner in there, and they're off to the side, and I just didn't need that. Pretty much the only thing I need to access in front of me is the volume knob and the mute on my interface. And all that extra space on a big desk like that, well, it just becomes cluttered with papers and books and all sorts of things anyway. So I looked for months, right from the beginning. I knew I wanted to try a smaller desk, and I looked for a long time, and I couldn't find anything. Almost all the desks out there that I liked the design of, they were either the same size or even bigger than that desk I had before. And any of the designs I saw where the rack unit was in the middle of the desk right in front of me, which is what I wanted, well, that put the computer screen up on a shelf up high, and I didn't want to have to crane my neck like that to look at the screen. So I didn't like that. There just wasn't anything. But then I somehow managed to come across this desk, which I found on eBay from a builder in the UK, and I thought, wow, this is exactly what I want. It's small, it's compact, but it has everything I need. I love the angled rack unit in the middle where I could put my interface there and control my microphone gain, the volume, the mute, all that stuff, plug the headphones in. And then there's a perfect space behind it to put the computer screen so that it's not up too high on a shelf. It's got this really clever cutout design in the back so that if you needed to have monitors on stands really close to the desk, you could do that. I loved that. And then you have more rack space and storage for the computer and everything else underneath, hidden out of view, so everything would stay really nice and clean. Only problem is that it was across the ocean. So I sat on it for literally a few months, kept looking for another source to get this desk from, but I just ended up going back to that. So I thought, you know what, I'll just try it, whatever. I'll pay the extra for the shipping across the ocean. And I ordered it. But unfortunately, a day later, the seller, his name's John, really nice guy, really helpful in helping me try and figure out how I could still get this desk. But he canceled the order, said, I'm sorry, we can't ship overseas. But on that eBay page, one of the images showed quite detailed measurements of every part of the desk. So I thought, I wonder if someone local could just build this for me. And instantly, I thought of Jamie from the company around here called M Gear Design. He built the other desk that I had, and I thought, maybe he could build it for me. So we talked, we went back and forth a bit. I sent him the designs, the measurements, and he agreed to build this for me. And he did a great job. Now, I admit, once it was in here and I took a look for the first time, it felt a lot smaller than I expected. I was just so used to this huge honking desk in this room that it's weird to see 3-4 feet of space around this desk. But I also love that. I love the kind of minimal feeling design. It's very streamlined. It feels very clean. I love how my computer and a lot of the cables and everything is hidden out of sight underneath. The spot for the computer screen is perfect. And I think if I wanted to, and if I found a solution to put another pair of monitors up behind here, I could probably try to figure it out, although that's not really a priority for me right now. The monitoring situation, that is where the biggest adjustment and the biggest challenge has been. So when I first got the desk, I set it up right exactly where the old desk was. So it was quite far out from the back wall, maybe about 4 feet probably. And then I set up the monitors on stands close to me, basically where they would have been on my old desk. Now that in itself is a big change because for the past, I don't know, probably 10 years, I've had NS10s on the desk beside me, and that creates resonance or frequency bumps in the low mids when you have monitors on the desk like that. I was used to it because I'd mixed that way for so long, but that is the first big change. But when I sat down and I started playing some music, instantly I wasn't happy with it. It actually sounded terrible. The low mids were just this blurry, mushy mess. It was kind of the worst studio monitoring sound I've ever heard, honestly. The transients had like no definition. It was just bad. And so that began a process of an hour, maybe 2 hours of moving my mixing position, moving the desk around, moving the monitors closer together, closer to my ears, higher, lower, further back, all these different things. And I started to find that the further away I put the monitors from me and from the desk, they started to sound better. I started to get more clarity, better stereo image, definitely started getting a lot more low end, to the point where I ended up pushing the monitors all the way back to the wall, almost as far as they can go. And, it brought to mind the fact that when you put monitors in a small room like this, right next to the back wall, it's going to create a low end bump. It's going to multiply the low end energy that's bouncing back at you. And you can use that for your advantage. That's not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, I've heard some studio designers and people who deal with acoustics, they will purposely do this to achieve a certain sound. So I decided to go with that for now. It's only been a few days, but I've been listening to a lot of reference tracks, listening to some of my mixes, and I feel like, it still has that NS10 sound that I'm used to in the mid-range and the top end, but I don't have that low mid bump. Instead, I have more of a bump lower down. Like, it's actually kind of a bizarre experience to feel like I can almost feel the thump from the kick in the bass just coming from NS10s. It's actually kind of cool. I'm kind of interested in actually mixing a full song from scratch with this new setup, feeling like I can actually hear and reference the low end in ways that I normally couldn't with these speakers. Plus, I can access the electrical panel now, and it gives me a lot more flexibility with placing the camera and the lighting as I'm making these videos. Even this angle I'm shooting with right now to you, I could not put the camera there with my old desk. So I'm kind of excited about that as well. But the journey continues with this new room. It's been almost a year and I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm always learning, adjusting, trying to streamline my workflow and clean things up. And I wanted to share this journey with you, especially if you're someone who doesn't have a room anything like this. Maybe you're just in a tiny little bedroom or a small basement space, and it's nothing like this with the purposely designed and built space with all the acoustic treatment and all that. Well, guess what? Even though I have that in this room, I still have to readjust and I still have to move monitors around like a whole bunch of times and try to find the right spot. And then I have to relearn this environment, which always happens. Like, whether you're mixing in a bedroom or a basement or $1 million studio, you just have to learn the space. You have to take time. Every time you change monitors, every time you change your environment, that learning process has to happen again. And that's kind of where I'm at, but that's the way to make sure your mixes translate. It's not about having the best room or having the best monitors. It's about knowing that space and knowing how mixes sound in your room so that you know how they're going to translate outside. So I'll keep you up to date if anything else changes with my desk or the space or my monitors. Now, if you haven't seen the studio diary of the build of this entire room from scratch, like from total unfinished basement into this space right here, you can check out those videos. We've got a playlist of the studio build process.